Interesting times today in the House of Commons. Sarah Pochin, you may remember, she is Parliament's newest MP. She is a Reform UK MP. She won that dramatic by-election in Runcorn by 6 votes. This was her debut question. Take it away, Sarah.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, there's no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all...
Shut up. I mean, how about answering the question? How about answering the question? That's outrageous. This is Prime Minister's question time. A representative of the people stands up and asks a question. Should we ban the burqa? You know, the way the House of Commons reacted was as if she said, should we kill every baby? Oh, my God, what did she say? What did she say? Oh, my God. Then the Prime Minister's question time, his answer is, I'm not going to follow you down that line. Well, you're supposed to answer the questions. And I think it's a very valid question. It's certainly a debate that I think we should have. As Sarah Pochin quite rightly said, well, in fact, there are about 22 countries around the world, including Muslim countries, Tunisia, for example, that ban the burqa. Many European countries, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Denmark, France, Luxembourg, Holland, Switzerland, parts of Italy, Spain. If you want to know, Africa, Cameroon, Chad, Congo, Gabon, and Tunisia, as I just said. In Asia, China, Kyrgyzstan, Sri Lanka, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. So there's a lot of countries have banned the burqa. It is not an outlandish topic, something we should talk about in this country. Let's debate it. First of all, sort of pro-ban. She is in favour of a ban on the burqa, is Jess Gill. She's a columnist and a founder of the Women's Safety Initiative. Welcome, Jess. And against the ban is Grace Badamosi. She's a political commentator. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Well, first of all, Jess, tell us why you would agree with a ban.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, Kev. It's a real pleasure to be here. I think ultimately the burqa represents oppression, and I don't just mean oppression in this like liberal, modern woke feminist idea we have today, but I mean actual oppression. If you're wearing something like a burqa, you're no longer almost seen as a person because you can't, communicate to people. It hinders learning, for example, in a class. If you're a teacher and you're trying to communicate to a student wearing a burqa, how are you meant to do that adequately? When you can't, see their facial expressions, you can't, see if they're struggling with a question. It hinders them in all sorts of social life. And the reason why, they're made to wear a burqa, it's not because of modesty. There are ways to demonstrate modesty without having to completely cover up. It is about oppression. It's about silencing women and making sure that they're seen as objects.
Grace, sounds like good points to me. Why would you oppose a ban, or why do you want the current status quo to continue, that for the burqa to be allowed, for women to be allowed to sort of cover up in this way? Why do you support that?
Firstly as well, thank you, Kevin, for having me on. I think it's important to understand that this debate isn't about whether we personally like the burqa. It's about whether the British government should be criminalising an item of clothing worn by a small number of women as a matter of religious conscience. A burqa ban is unnecessary. It's completely against Britain's liberal democratic values, and it's actually completely counterproductive to the aims that people set out. So I am firmly against it. I think in the UK we have freedom of religion, we have the idea of bodily autonomy, and people should have the right to choose what they want to do. Particularly religious freedom is fundamental to our identity in Britain. So I think things like a burqa ban is just legislating against a problem that doesn't really exist. About 0.05% of British Muslims wear a burqa. That's not 0.05% of British people. That's 0.05% of British Muslims. This is a Reform MP, so about 20% of their representation in Parliament, stating something that is not a problem for the majority of people.
Why would you think a Muslim country like Tunisia would ban the burqa then?
I think ultimately Tunisia can do whatever they want, but I know
but why would a Muslim country ban the burqa?
Again, I'm not concerned with what Tunisia does. I'm concerned with...
Try to answer that, though.
But I'm saying that in the UK, we have set a very clear precedent of people having the freedom of religion. And if people choose to wear the burqa, I don't see why we should be setting up a system of control. I think in the UK, we've set up a system where it's like the state does not interfere in people's lives. So I don't see why the burqa ban would be in line with the policies that we have in the UK. Tunisia can do whatever they like, but in the UK, I would like to keep that precedent of allowing people to do what they want. By
the way, Tunisia is by far and away and not the only Muslim country that bans the burqa. What do you say, we'll come back to you in just a little while, Jess, what do you say to Jess's point that it demeans women, it makes women a second-class citizen? I don't think, I really have a lot of sympathy with the idea governments shouldn't be telling women or anyone what to wear. But I think that the objections to the burqa are not merely that. The objection is cultural. We have a society that does not approve of essentially treating women as second-class citizens, as the kind of people who need to be covered up, and that it's cultural. There are, of course, also security fears, but I think that's a sort of periphery issue. It's cultural, that in this country we do not like signs, demonstrative signs of treating women as second-class citizens.
I mean, I take Jess's earlier point that you can think the burqa ban is oppressive, but again, I go back to my earlier point that this isn't a question of whether we personally like the burqa. This is about the government telling people what to do. You cannot claim to liberate women by telling them what they can and cannot wear. This isn't sort of feminism. This isn't a liberal democracy. This is simply coercion by another name, essentially. I don't buy the idea that this is against sort of Britain's values, because as I mentioned, Britain's values are a liberal democracy, so actually imposing a ban would be going against our cultural values.
Well, Jess, sometimes though a government does have to take a stand, and I would suggest that this is cultural, that the people who want to ban on the burqa feel it is un-British, it's not commensurate with our freedoms, our principles of equality of the sexes, and that the burqa demotes women very much to second-class citizen. I mean, personally, I'm trying to remain very neutral about this, but I kind of cringe when I see these women with the really serious ones walking down the road. You think, what on earth is going on here? Your thoughts, Jess?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is a symbol of regression in terms of where we're heading as a country, the fact that women can't go out and show their face. At the end of the day, I completely understand and I'm sympathetic towards the argument of freedom, but at the same time, these women don't have freedom. You talk about saying, you know, let women choose what to wear. These women don't have a choice of what to wear. I very much doubt it is their choice to be fully covered up, especially, I know Britain isn't the hottest of climates, but recently, like, I would hate to be in a situation where I'd have to be fully covered up like that. You know, they don't have a choice like this. They don't have a choice because they're enforced on it by their community, by their family a lot of the time. And I think if you actually look at these women, you know, they want the help, but unfortunately they don't have a voice. And part of the reason why they don't have a voice is because they're silenced, because you know, you can't really communicate to someone when all you can see is just that. Like, it's impossible. How do you even go about that?
And it can be worse than that. It can be the total sort of cover-up thing. They just look through a mesh. And to go back to you, Grace, you know, the governments do have laws about apparel. I mean, for example, all governments around the world do require you to wear clothes. So, you know, you are banned from walking around the country nude. So there is a law to do with clothes. You also can't walk around with a T-shirt with a Nazi swastika on it and so on and so forth. There are lots of laws about what you wear. So the government does have a role in apparel. So why would you say it is none of the government's business what women wear?
Well, I think firstly on Jess's point, talking about the women who choose to wear the burqa are forced to, I think that is quite a broad generalisation of women who choose to wear the burqa. I think you will find that there are many women who choose to. Again, this isn't about your personal feelings on it, but understanding that there are people who choose to. And even for the people who are coerced into wearing the burqa, they are perhaps forced by their communities. If they are not able to wear the burqa in public, that then means they are just not in public. They completely disappear from public life. So it's, again, absolutely counterproductive to the aim you're trying to set out. You're saying that you want to give these women an opportunity to actually take part in having jobs and being part of a community, but if they
It'd be a nice idea, wouldn't it?
But I'm saying, but exactly, that is a great idea.
Or are we against that?
If you take away their ability to be in public, that means they completely disagree. So I'm going back to my point that this isn't liberating women the way that you think it is. And in terms of what your point about the government actually being able to make these laws, I again go back to the point that this isn't an issue for anyone. This petition came up in 2013. It got 13,000 signatures or whatever, and didn't even make it to the point of being discussed in Parliament, because this is an absolute complete non-issue. This is a Reform MP who's just got into Parliament.
Never mind. No, it's not. It doesn't matter about a reform. Doesn't matter about a Reform MP.
Yeah.
This is an important issue that we should all be discussing. And Jess, the point, what Grace was just saying there, if you're a Muslim woman and the people around you require you to wear that full thing, that kind of sinister-looking thing, you're excluded from normal life, aren't you? You can't get a job, you can't work in an office. It's a real repression, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think ultimately as well, it's just a symptom of the main issue here, which is the fact that we've had so much mass immigration from countries which simply do not respect women. I mean, look at the rise of female genital mutilation, for example. And again, a lot of this comes from countries which, have this abhorrent view of women, treat them like property, say that they can't go outside in public without a man, without covering up. And it's just a symptom of that. And I think as we continue to go down this route, and if something like this isn't confronted, I think we're going to continue like that.
I agree. Well, let's talk, if we can, Grace, about a rather more mundane aspect of all of this, and that is the security issue. That people with the full cover on, you can't see their face. For all you know, they might be a bloke. It's been used before for nefarious purposes. What about that? I mean, you can't see their face. There's so many points in the day where seeing a face is quite important. How about that? What don't you think we should think about that?
Again, firstly, you're right that is sort of a peripheral issue. That's not the main reason people...
But it's worth discussing.
But you're right, it is worth discussing. And I would say to that we already have policies in place for these areas that require verifying identity when needed. We have these policies in place at airports, at banks, polling stations, whatever. And we also have the necessary legislation to put these in place. A blanket ban is not required in order to enforce security. This is, again, the role of a government imposing its will on citizens. And I would ask, once you allow this, where does this go? So we start banning hijabs, we start banning people...
Well, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the point being that all of these headgears, particularly the full burqa, what is that? What are they for? I'll tell you what they're for. Allegedly, they are to curtail the base instincts of men who will be driven sexually wild by being able to see a woman's face. That is medieval claptrap, isn't it? So why don't we get rid of these headgears?
Ultimately, again, I go back to my point at the very beginning.
What do you think? It is medieval claptrap, isn't it?
You don't have to like the burqa to...
I didn't say... It's not about liking it. It's about taking... It's about taking... Look. What this is about? This is about a suggestion that the government of this country takes the position that we, culturally, in Britain, do not like the burqa, and we're going to burn it.
Again, I go back to my previous point. There is no security issue for the women that you say you're trying to liberate.
What about us not liking the burqa? Why?
Again,
it is actually, Grace. It is actually about whether or not we like it. That's it. It's actually at the heart of the issue.
Okay, so the government decides that people can't wear crosses. The government decides that people can't wear kippas. By introducing this precedent, you don't understand the role that you're giving government in terms of completely curtailing religious freedom. I think that is an awful precedent to be setting in a country like the UK.
So what do you feel about the fact that we're banned from wearing swastikas? What do you feel about that?
Obviously, that is a symbol of hate. I wouldn't say that that's the same as a hijab.
So you're okay in principle with the government having laws about apparel?
Well, I'm okay with
Well, you obviously are. You just said you are.
That's quite different to religious.
No, it's not. It's not great. It's not, is it, Jess?
A cross and a swastika on the same level at all, actually.
Well, I think you can. Jess?
I just think the burqa is fundamentally anti-British as well, and whenever I see it, I just think, why are we importing this foreign culture, which again is very oppressive to women? I don't think that point should be underestimated. And even if a woman chooses to, adopt such dressing, again, what does that say about herself? And I don't think, if I was to wear something like that, I wouldn't have the best esteem. I don't think I could represent myself properly. I don't think I could have autonomy. And I think that's just an awful shame. And I think, just out of principle, it's sad to go into my local town centre and just to see all these women in burqas. And I just think, for one, it's a shame for them, because, I would like to see their faces and communicate to them and, speak to them and engage with them as members of society and members of my community. But I can't, because all I can see is their eyes, if that. And that's a common issue in a lot of town centres. But also as well, what is this foreign culture doing in Britain, in these towns of Britain? It's an absolute shame.
And to reiterate my point, Jess, respect to Grace's viewpoint, and I do understand, the kind of argument, do we really want a government telling women what they can and cannot wear? But I think it does go beyond that. And it is really, Grace keeps saying it's not about whether or not we like the burqa. It is precisely about whether or not we like the burqa, and many people, like yourself, Jess, don't. And the government in other countries has taken a position. We as a nation do not like this, and we're going to ban it. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for once, we need to realise we shouldn't be ashamed to enforce our cultures, our values. And I think it is fundamentally British to be against something like that. Grace talks about liberalism, and I think, a part of engaging in a liberal democracy is being able to be an active member in that, if that's the kind of system you want. And I think wearing the burqa, you can't engage in that. And I think, for once, we want to talk about what it means to be British, and we have all these cultures coming over here and inserting what their culture means. And I think there's a lot of value, in these cultures. I don't want to hate on these cultures, but they're not British, and I don't think, that should be a rising thing in Britain.
Let me ask you this, Grace. Your argument is, one of freedom of choice. Women should be able to wear whatever they choose, whether or not we personally like their choice of apparel, their choice of the burqa. If every Muslim woman decided, I don't want to wear this anymore, and all the Muslim blokes go, that's fine by us. So suddenly we have a situation where no Muslim women are wearing the burqa. Would you personally like that? Would you prefer that?
I don't see why I wouldn't. I go back to my.
So you would prefer that? You would prefer that?
I'm not saying I would. I prefer a situation where women are given the ability to choose what.
Yeah.
They
So
want.
if they all chose.
A burqa or not a burqa,
yeah. But you personally, if they all chose and they were allowed to ditch the burqa, not wear anything, but wear just, you can see all their faces, they wear normal clothes. If that happened, would you personally like that?
If that happened, I would be happy, because that means that women are given the opportunity to make their own choice. That's the argument I go back to. Ultimately, the argument that Jess is making is ignoring the voices, the actual women that are being affected. You're assuming their position. You're assuming
I'm not assuming their position
and it's
at all.
It's completely not evidence-based at all.
I'll tell you one thing, Grace and Jess. A lot more women who have to wear the burqa hate doing it than we are informed about. It is not a popular thing about among Muslim women. There's always this argument, oh, Muslim women, they all want to do this, It's not true, is it, Jess?
Yeah, evidently it isn't. I genuinely don't think it is. And again, like, I would ask Grace if she's spoke to many of these women, but again, I very much doubt that they've had an opportunity to speak out against this. Again, it's hard to say that, you know, I'm not speaking for these women when, again, they don't have a voice. And I think that's the issue. How do you engage with somebody who's fully covered up, who you can't even see their face? It is an incredibly difficult thing to do, and I think it kind of removes their humanity, which is just such a shame, because I think these women deserve to be seen. I think, you know, if feminism is going to be about something, it should be about making these women visible. And I think ultimately, you know, maybe for a few of them it is their choice, I don't know. But at the end of the day, what it represents, what it means to them as a person, I think it is awful. It's silencing them. It's meaning that they're less of a human. It means that they're less understood. It means that, you know, they're more likely to face oppression because they can't represent themselves, and, you know, no one can see their face. So, you know, no one can relate to them. And I think that's just such an awful shame. And I think by removing the burqa, well, for one, if it does lead to these women not being seen in society, for one, like, I think that would be more of an outward sign of abuse. And I think social services, I would like to think, would be able to capture that. And so it would show that Britain isn't taking a stand for this. But also, too, like, I think, you know, ultimately, who is leading the campaign in favour of the burqa? I really doubt it is also women wearing the burqa. You know, they don't seem to actually talk about this, and I wonder why.
I think it's Grace, actually. Now, Grace, serious, that's just a joke. You may have noticed I'm sort of more on Jess's side than yours, Grace, but you've fought a very powerful argument, so I'm going to give you the last word. What would you like to say?
I think, firstly, Jess, I do share your same one of women being given the right to be in public and take part in society. I share that. But ultimately, this isn't a debate about clothing. This is a debate about the kind of society we want to live in, one where the state can decide what religious symbols are allowed, what clothing people can wear. And I quite frankly think that in a country like Britain, where we pride ourselves on being a liberal democracy, we should not be implementing laws that restrict that. I think we do not defend liberal values by abandoning them. So
I really want to fight back against that, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to. So listen, you two, thank you so much.